Welcome to 14 Victor Echo. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Not your pilot, because he just jumped out.
Must be the Red Bull plane swap.
So we watched the Red Bull plane swap stunt that they did a couple weeks ago. What did you think of what they were doing?
Well, the millions and millions of people that tuned in to watch it, I think were satisfied.
So there was a huge outcry in the night that the plane swap happened from the pilot community about how stupid it was and how unsafe it was. Where did you think it fell in that spectrum?
Honestly, I was not at the stupidity level. I was at the, oh my goodness, they're taking these modified Cessnas and they're gonna jump out of them and then jump back in them. Honestly, I thought it was kind of cool.
So, a little background. In a former life of mine, I've spent over 10 years as an active skydiver. 8 of those years I was a skydiving instructor. And during my skydiving and also base jumping career, I've had the pleasure of jumping both with Andy and with Luke at different times in my skydiving career. So wouldn't say I'm super close friends with them, but I have spent time around them. Some of their friends are the ones who taught me how to do gainers off of a bridge in Twin Falls, Idaho while doing a base jump. I have a lot of respect for the Red Bull Air Force as they are called, and a lot of the stunts they do. You know, a lot of people think it's stupid and they push the limits, but without pushing the limits, we never find out what's possible. So yes, they do crazy things. That's kind of the point. But the Red Bull plane swap came up, and I was like, oh, I'm excited to watch it. So the broadcast was kind of boring. They started at about 2 hours early. But the B-roll that they played about the planning that went into it, the safety precautions that they have done, and the engineering that they put into modifying these airplanes to pull this stunt off, in my opinion, was pretty impressive. Now, does it make a difference? Is it going to make aviation better, safer? No, that's a certain place you do things because it's fun. There's no reason to go skydiving. It's a fun sport to do, and it's something I'm thankful I spent time doing, but doing this stunt for any specific reason, no. But that shouldn't be a reason not to do it. So the sport.
So you, being Mr. Safety, because that's the only reason I ever got into a small plane with you, is because you gave me a full safety briefing and explained everything. Do you think this was done in the safest way possible?
For the stunt that they were doing, they went to great lengths for safety. So yes, I do think this stunt was done in a very safe way for the stunt that they were doing. And this is also coming from some of the leaked documents that happened to the FAA of their whole safety briefing that they presented to the FAA. It was a pretty comprehensive safety program. I don't look at it as they set out to dive 2 airplanes, jump out, and cross to the other airplane. That was the hopeful outcome, and that outcome was in question. They didn't know if they can pull that off. But what they did know and had a high degree of confidence in is if both planes lost control, that they were going to crash in a safe area devoid of any obstacles, humans, lives, property damage. And that was the actual plan A, in my opinion, was we're going to jump out of these airplanes, make our best attempt. That's not going to work. We are going to get away from where these airplanes are, deploy our parachutes, and land safely. So from that standpoint, I think they did a great job of planning a safe outcome. Now, if they were able to actually swap airplanes and recover them, that was their goal, but that was a nice to have. So yes, I do think they put an inordinate amount of effort into being safe in this stunt.
What do you think would have been the worst possible thing that could have happened?
The worst possible thing could have happened, again, it would have been injury or death to one of the participants. And when you do a stunt, you sign up for that. As a pilot, the number one thing I don't want to do is injure an unwilling participant. Injure or kill an unwilling participant. My second priority is to bring me and the occupants of the airplane down safely. I don't think there's really much chance of hurting myself and keeping everyone else safe. Unfortunately, our fates are tied together at that point. But the air crew and the passengers are number 2 in the priority list. Unwilling participants are number 1. And in this case, they really took that to heart. So yes, they could have, when Andy or Luke got out of the airplane, if it started spinning too early and I got whacked on the head by the airplane, got knocked unconscious, they have automatic activation devices on their chute. Even unconscious, they would have landed under a parachute and would have been banged up, but would have been fine. So what's the worst that could happen? It's like a lot of things have got to go wrong. And with as many skydives as they've had plenty of opportunities that have far worse happen to them.
Oh, I've seen some of your bad jumps on video. So I guess my thought would be, okay, let's say they got knocked unconscious, they're their chute deployed at altitude. Let's say they needed to cut away at that point.
If they got knocked unconscious, the reserve is the one that automatically deploys and not the main. And it deploys at 750 feet above the ground.
Not much time left.
Which, cutaway, yeah, you're already on plan C or D at this point. There is no going back to plan B, which is, cutaway. So, and in the sport of skydiving, I hate to say it, a lot of people don't understand the skydiving culture, and skydiving is a very safe sport, especially if you go for your first jump on a tandem or an AFF. A lot of safety's put into that, but us skydivers, when we get licensed and we're bored and trying to have some fun, we do stupid things. And out of the stupidest things that skydivers do on a routine basis, this stunt was kind of like in the middle. It really was not that out there.
I mean, all he did was jump out of a plane, pull chute.
Now, the other thing, people are like, they crashed a plane and it could have hurt somebody. So let's talk about that for a second. There's a skydive center out in the area. Not enough information is available to me at this point to conclusively know the specific area they did this stunt at, but Eloy, Arizona has an event that they do on a regular basis. I think it used to be every year. I don't know if they still do it or not. They called it Trash Day or Junk Day, where they pushed all kinds of strange things out of an airplane over a very wide open, clear desert where they knew they had this huge area that things could land on and not damage anything. They've done things like pushed out cars with skydivers sitting in it, and when the car started flipping to the point that they couldn't hold on, skydivers are spitting out of the car in all kinds of different directions. There was another skydiver who built this whole living room on this big piece of wood. So he had a couch, a TV, a lamp. He actually had batteries plugged in. This is back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before all the technology we have now. So seeing this living room fallen with a TV actually running and lamps turned on was kind of a pretty impressive thing. Then when he got to a certain altitude, he unbuckled his seatbelt on the couch, deployed his parachute, and the whole living room comes crashing down on the ground. This is a routine thing that they do. It's not really that much different if two 182s come crashing down in that same area. So the whole I'm worried about hurting people or the planes flying away out of the area. It was a very wide safety area that, you know, even if the plane started flying again, exited the spin, it's got a giant speed brake, the engine was cut off and would not turn back on unless the pilot got in there and turned it back on. That plane ain't going far. It's not going out of that safety area. And that's the one thing I did see in the safety briefing that they presented to the FAA, that the safety area was big enough.
So why do you think the FAA is all up in arms?
So then we get to the real crux of the story. The Red Bull and Luke Akins filed the paperwork for the exemption, because if you're going to fly, there's a thing called minimum required crew on an airplane, and intentionally leaving the airplane with the intention of maybe get into the other one does violate the minimum crew requirement of even a Cessna 182.
Yeah.
So there is a process to waive certain rules under certain conditions, and you know, people are like, why would you do that? Well, have you ever been to an air show?
Yeah.
Oshkosh waives a lot of rules. And what they do is they put a TFR, is what the way it looks to us pilots, but that's called an airbox. And you have an air boss who owns that airspace, and they are allowed to violate specific rules under specific conditions. So Red Bull went through the process to file for this waiver.
Red Bull or Luke?
Well, Luke personally did it, and that's what the news story is saying. As far as I'm concerned, Luke is on the Red Bull Air Force, so
representing Red Bull.
I think it's a moot issue if it's Luke or Red Bull, because he was doing it on behalf of Red Bull if he was. But yeah, he was personally going through the process. He is a licensed, certificated pilot and a skydiver, and very active in the skydiving community and pilot community. So the issue I have is the FAA gave him a denial letter 2 days before this very public event. And from the best I can tell, it wasn't like they waited till last minute to submit this form. And I don't think you would just blindly mail the FAA this packet. You've been talking to the local FSDO in the planning of this, so they know it's coming. You've had some conversations with it. I don't know if that happened or not, but I would assume. Two major issues I have. One, you get a denial 2 days before the event, and Luke, according to his public statement, did not tell anybody else on the team and went on with the stunt as planned. Doing that right after denial, that's just wrong. And that will be punished, should be punished. And today's news story that we heard today is his and Andy's pilot certificate has been revoked. Up to 1 year, they can begin the process to reapply for it. And to get the denial letter and knowingly and willingly still continue, yeah, you deserve that. Unfortunately, as much as I love Luke and Andy, you deserve that. But the FAA, I'm concerned they're backtracking on some of the goodwill that they have made in the last several years with that. One, sending a denial letter 2 days before, that's bad form. You know how much time and marketing and effort and expense has already gone into this. If you have a concern, pick up the phone. Let's really talk through this and see. Let's be partners in this. Even if you think it's stupid, it's like, hey, this is stupid, but let's talk through this. 2 days before is very, very short notice. But that's not where I'm really concerned that the FAA is backtracking. Over the last several years, we know back in the day, the FAA is not happy until you're unhappy, and those kind of statements about how difficult the FAA can be to work with and how quick they are to enforce rules. And there's good reason, because aviation safety, and we don't have a huge margin for stupidity and bad actors. But over the last several years, we've gotten this sense that you can take Harrison Ford, for example. he done screwed up, landed on a taxiway instead of the runway. And there's no excuse for that. But the attitude the pilot has when a mistake has been made, if the pilot's pointing fingers, it's not my fault, you see the sun was in my eyes and this plane distracted me and all this other stuff, if you're displaying one of the 5 hazardous behaviors, the FAA is going to enforce heavier. If you take a more approach that is you take ownership of your mistake, you take ownership of the learning that you need to do to make sure that mistake never happens again, the enforcement tends to be lighter. And in this case, it wasn't like a Trevor Jacobs issue where, oh, I'm going to roll the cameras and jump out of an airplane and I hope it doesn't hurt anybody. That was, for best case, his safety plan. Was, I hope it doesn't land on something important. I hope it doesn't catch fire.
That is not a safety plan.
That is not a safety plan. In this case, they had pages and pages, and they had engineers and researchers and people with experience and back this up and plan B for this, and if this happens, this is going to happen. They've rehearsed, they've practiced, they've done these things. So it's not like they took a blind eye towards safety and did this. Now, they did take a blind eye towards the denial letter and still did that, and that's going to stand, and there's no two ways about that. And Luke stood up and said, look, I take ownership of not letting anybody know. These other participants were under the understanding that this has been approved and did not know it has been denied. It might be a little hogwash there, but they were committed to doing the stunt. They already spent the money. Mm-hmm. So for that, I would be 100% defending the Red Bull Air Force on this if it wasn't for that blatant denial and then continue doing it.
I feel like when they got the denial letter, they should have been like, all right, we're going to reschedule and have another chat with the FAA.
Yeah.
But, so if you watched it, you noticed that Andy was completely broken up in the end.
He was.
Do you think he knew about the denial and he knew they were fixing to get slapped with something like this?
I don't think even losing his pilot's license for a year would cause him to be that broken up. Knowing the skydiving culture and knowing Andy and Luke the little bit that I do, I legit think he was broken up and sad that it only half succeeded. And he had spent, I don't know how long they were doing this, like years preparing for this, and for it to have come and gone, and he watched his friend and cousin Luke successfully get to the airplane, but he couldn't.
It's not like it was his fault.
It wasn't his fault, but
it was spinning.
He came there to do something. And I guarantee you, when he saw that plane spinning, he thought, I might be able to do this. As an AFF instructor, we used to deal with spinning students all the time. It was like, oh, he's spinning around. You had to swoop in, stop them spinning, flip them over, and pull their parachute for them. That's things we were trained to do. And that's me with 2,000 skydives. Andy has got 25,000 skydives. He's a way better skydiver than I'll ever be. And so, yeah, I guarantee you, he spent a brief second saying, I think I can do this. And then his survival instinct kicked in. The thing I was really impressed about was as soon as he decided to bail, you see him flip over on his back and go into this track position. And tracking is a position we do as skydivers to get forward momentum. We can get up to like 60 miles an hour tracking in free fall. It's really amazing. I've raced trucks going down highways before in free fall. But he's flipping over on his back because he's looking up to make sure he can get clear of where the airplane is. Because the worst thing that could happen is I deploy my parachute, then a spinning 182 comes through and clocks you over the head.
Yeah, that could be bad.
And I guarantee you that wasn't an accident. That wasn't something he thought about doing. That was something they had briefed, they had practiced, and they knew that in the event we have to bail, priority one is to get away from the airplanes and deploy your parachute in clear space.
Yeah.
So they did everything they could I wish the FAA would be a little bit more progressive and would have approved this and done a air show box around it. Forced them to have a qualified air boss to control the airspace, just like any air show would, and say, okay, if you want to risk your airplanes to do this, we see that you have cleared the safety area and we're going to let you do it. But they said no. For whatever reason, they said no. And that no, they own the airspace. That no counts.
I guarantee that whole evening, every pilot was on their phone saying, where's the TFR? Where's the TFR?
I looked, I couldn't find it.
So
I didn't know if they were doing it in California or Arizona at the time of the event, because they were a little cloak and dagger. I also didn't spend a lot of time researching to see. But now, after the fact, I'm pretty confident they did it outside of Eloy, Arizona. I think that runway was the skydiving zone for Eloy. Yeah, so they did it, and my heart goes out for Andy and Luke, just because I know they put their heart and soul into this, and now they have to fight the battles that are coming. But it doesn't go out too much because they made a bonehead move and continuing after the denial, and that they shouldn't have done.
yeah, it's almost like they kind of saw it coming.
Yep. So.
But it was really cool.
It was cool. It was cool. I could see myself doing it. And for those of you who don't know, Luke is the one several years ago who jumped out of a caravan at 23,000 feet without a parachute and landed in a net. Now that was a crazy, crazy stunt. And I talk about the backup plans and all this other stuff. There was no backup plan there. There was hit a grain of rice from 23,000 feet or die.
Well, go check that one out.
It's a great stunt. Well, thank you for joining us on what we thought of the Red Bull plane swap.